where that future of search is going. Now, us SEO people, we like to make stuff sound really complicated so we can sound really smart, pulling out terms like latent semantic indexing or crawl depth analysis. But the reality of SEO is it's very fundamentally simple, right? Create a good user experience for users to come on a website and help build a brand so that Google can see that and position that in its search results.
Well, Harry, thanks so much for joining us on the DevLaunch podcast. I got tons of questions for you, so I'm excited to pick your brain.
Yeah, excited to be here, excited to dive in.
One thing that I am also excited to talk a little bit about is you're not just staying in Australia, you're expanding globally. And if I remember correctly, we were talking just before the show started, you guys have started doing some work in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And you are already at 500,000 ARR with only having been here for 2 months.
Yeah,
That's nuts.
You can't keep the Aussies in Australia. That's the problem with us. The Brits tried, and look where we are now.
Right.
But yeah, no, we started the model in Australia, grew that to about 80 SEO specialists full time, and then did it in the UK and grew that out to another 20. And I figure I can't have the US missing out on the fun, so figure we gotta go by there too.
I love that. Well, and for people who don't know, Harry is the CEO and founder of StudioHawk. And I still love the copy on your website. You basically are just like, yeah, we're not generalists, just a damn good SEO agency.
That's it, man.
So talk about some excellent positioning there. Very much specializing in SEO, pretty much exclusively, right? There's not any fringes that you guys are touching, just SEO.
Just SEO.
Okay. Well, and I think because of that, I really wanted to dive into some specific things around SEO because I've been hearing plenty of my own buzz. Everybody's talking AI, but specifically AI as it relates to how it's impacting SEO and more specifically like search, like Google search.
Yeah.
Obviously just like when you think about like how people are now interacting on the internet, I mean, I myself have been experiencing this too. I find myself starting to go to my ChatGPT and saying, especially with this web search capabilities, I'm asking it to do a lot of the heavy lifting that I normally would do on Google search. So like I'm even interacting with search differently. So something I'd love to get your perspective on kind of being the expert in this field is, AI with SEO. How do you see that impacting? How have you seen it already impacting in 2024? And like, what is your perspective? What are your thoughts on where we're headed in 2025 for AI and SEO?
Yeah, I love it. Right out of the gates, we got some crackers. So there's a few different answers I'd give to that. So let's cover off first where that future of search is going. Now, us SEO people, we like to make stuff sound really complicated so we can sound really smart, pulling out terms like latent semantic indexing or crawl depth analysis. But the reality of SEO is it's very fundamentally simple, right? Create a good user experience for users to come on a website and help build a brand so that Google can see that and position that in its search results. The same fundamentals hold true for Bing, which is what powers Search GPT. And most LLMs are using the same kind of framework as Google. The biggest difference is less of a reliance on a lot of technical stuff, a lot of like box ticking, like image alt tags and stuff like that. The future of SEO probably doesn't have room for, which is fine. I don't like image alt tags. I don't like doing them. It's boring. But then there's also the part where it's like bigger, more authoritative backlinks are now playing more of a part because these LLMs don't crawl as deep on those kind of linked assets as something like a Google does, which, to be fair, has had a lot more time and experience to crawl the web. So it's interesting in that regard. I mean, I think, in moving on to the next part of that question, I think that AI will be the revolution that we thought voice search would be. I mean, we definitely, as SEOs, we mucked that one up. We'll take it on we'll cop it. Like we were going like everyone's gonna do voice search, everyone's gonna do this. No one's really voice searching for anything other than very rudimentary, basic informational queries. Frankly, I think that AI will be quite similar. Like everyone's obsessed with search, like it's this one big thing, but search is really like transactional, informational, navigational. And I think AI really is going to own that informational part. Like if you're doing an informational search, you're going to use AI. If you're looking for a plumber or something, you might use a more traditional search engine that's built for linking you up with that.
Hmm.
So I think it's just kind of introducing a new kind of opportunity there. How much is people using it? Well, Tony, you and I, we both use it a ton. The average person, not so much. If we look at traffic for some of the e-commerce brands that are really invested in ChatGPT, we're seeing about 2% of total traffic coming through or being referred through ChatGPT.
Oh,
So
interesting.
that's not too much considering the amount of time that's gone into it. And frankly, that hasn't increased in the past 6 months either.
So maybe to play devil's advocate to that, because the thing that goes through my mind
Mm,
with was, I guess, some things that I've been hearing is that the reason why people might not be clicking through is because they've already got the information they need
totally.
within ChatGPT. Do you feel like that's legitimate for why we might see such low numbers?
Yeah, I mean, half legitimate. So this is what I'm saying. Informational queries. Yeah, why the hell would I need to click on their website? But Tony, this is an e-commerce website. You know, they they're not selling anything through ChatGPT, right? So, yes, absolutely, sure. There's a very likely scenario where people are getting the information they want, but realistically, you would expect these people to want to, at the end of the day, buy some shoes, which is what these guys sell. So there's only so much information you're going to want from ChatGPT about these shoes before you're going to want to, make a purchasing decision.
Yeah, I could see that. So I guess one thought with that, right, is you're saying, people are going to still be interacting with those websites when they're ready to
Mm,
make that purchasing decision. But when we think about like the purpose of like blog posts
mm,
is in essence is to try to build up some more authority and to
yeah,
try to get a little
yeah.
bit more eyes and attention so that when they're ready to buy, they're ready to now come to your site. Like, do you feel like any of that starts to change, or do you still feel like we're still in the space where it's like, no, I mean, we're still going to need blog posts, we're still going to need
Mm.
original content, even in the AI game?
Well, this is where it's going to take a lot of people a lot smarter than me to figure out how this information economy is going to work. Because, there's a implied agreement between, websites and Google. I put up fresh content. You give me topical authority. Topical authority helps translate to higher rankings in search. Now, that still does hold true in AI. The more topical authority you have, the better you rank in Bing, which is used by Search GPT. So, okay, fair enough. But let's look at the second part of that again, which is AI relies on original information. If people and websites are disincentivized to start producing original information, we end up in quite a, circular motion with our information. There's nothing new coming out. There's no new studies, there's no new information, there's no new opinions, there's no new anything. AI kind of is forced to feed only upon itself. And without
Hmm.
getting really deep in the weeds here, we've seen there was initial traction on AI using AI to self learn, but now if you look at any of the stuff coming out, they're saying that, okay, this AI teaching AI thing, yeah, the momentum on that isn't good. It's not going to move the model forward, which,
Hmm.
frankly, is makes sense. I can't teach myself any more about basketball than I already know.
Fair enough. So what I'm hearing you say is essentially there still is an incentive for the LLMs and the way that Google is serving up websites and whatnot. There still is an incentive to prioritize original content,
Mm,
even if the way that we interact with that through search is going to be changing. So from
yeah.
what I'm hearing you say is you're still assuming that or believing that there's going to need to still be something where original content is still going to be prized and valued and prioritized on the web.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, that's what users want. Users don't want AI's 10th take on, you know, some piece of information. People want original thought. They want opposing thoughts. They want
Hmm.
all sorts of things, and AI wants that too. That's AI didn't just pull this information out of thin air, guys. This is our information that it's compiled and grown with. So just like YouTube had to figure out a way of monetizing videos to incentivize their creators, AI has to have something similar, or else, I mean, putting all the copyright stuff to one side for a moment, which is a whole other discussion, there needs to be a reason for someone to put their information out to AI.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I know in some of your other talks, you've talked about this with digital PR,
Mm.
the impact or like the necessity rather of digital PR. Would you mind expanding a little bit about on this topic of digital PR and walk us through like why it might be so effective in the current environment we're in right now?
Yeah, so there's been a massive shift, predominantly out of the UK, which has started to expand over the world of this term called digital PR. The Brits are very good at this stuff, of like kind of building brands organically. Um, and PR for many years has been pretty ripe for disruption. It's a very notoriously untrackable, unmeasurable like area of kind of marketing. I got into a magazine. It could theoretically have 2 million views. It could get 1,000 views. I don't know. We don't know. Digital PR is more focused on the digital part of PR. It's in the name. It's in the name there, guys. And it's about building links from prominent websites and getting them to link back to your website. And in the LLM world, it doesn't even need to link. It just needs to talk about and reference your site, your brand, to build up that neural network, right? Um, so we might go out and we might do a data led piece. 7 out of 10 developers have now developed tinnitus because they listen to music too loud, right? This is just an example. And then we'll go out to different publications, maybe industry specific, and start posting stuff, or even general broader like BBC or CNN, and say and pitch them this story like a press release. Now we might create a really cool infographic on our website, or probably a step up from that, a really cool calculator or something to calculate your odds of getting tinnitus, the amount of years you have been a web developer, right? And that gets shares and links and goes all over the web, and that boosts your authority. And so that's a big piece because it's really directly boosting your SEO, which is measurable. So you can start going back and saying, okay, well, our traditional PR, frankly, we got no idea what that gave us. But our digital PR, we can say we got a 20% increase in our search visibility. And the same holds true in LLMs as we get more trackability on those, which will be kind of, we're getting more responses to queries.
Got it. So with, I guess with digital PR, I mean, when you guys are engaging in this or helping your clients engage in
Mm.
digital PR in particular, I guess are there other third parties that you typically work with to drum that up, or is that part of what you guys do at StudioHawk is develop those digital PR, I guess, campaigns?
That's what we do. It's part of the SEO remit now. So just like content and fixing up technical issues, not developing websites to be clear, but fixing up technical issues and stuff, it's very much part of the SEO remit. So yes, we do that. We developed a team to do that. There's only, I think, 2 or 3 companies in all of Australia doing it at the moment because it's such a time intensive and expensive process to kind of get up and running. But as it builds momentum, it's a really, really powerful way of doing it.
Yeah. I mean, from what you've gathered and from the clients you've been working with so far, is it typical that whether they be other agencies or other startups or e-commerce brands, do you typically find that they're already engaged in some type of digital PR, or is it usually like this is a completely net new thing and they're being introduced to this for the first time?
Frankly, about 90% of people I speak to about it, if they're in the UK, most people have heard of it. If they're not in the UK, 90% of people don't know what it is. That's across the US and Australia.
Hmm.
It's getting popular fast because there's case studies coming out about it. There's brands talking about it. It's kind of like a evolution of link building that also works really well with LLMs, which is a bit of a buzzword. So very exciting for a lot of brands. And also it's the kind of marketing that everyone loves, where I can show my boss a link or a placement we got in a prominent journal or something. So it kind of ticks a lot of boxes in the marketing world.
And what is it about digital PR that's so powerful when we think about like how AI is specifically changing the
Mm.
SEO game? Like, what is it about digital PR that's so important in the overall SEO game here?
Well, because those LLMs aren't so interested in those niche blogs that traditionally or SEOs will get links from, like your guest posts and stuff like that, it then creates ripples in the playing field. So then it becomes who's got the most impactful links. So who's got the highest quality, most impactful links,
Mm,
and that's the guys that are doing digital PR. So some brands will be doing PR already, but they're not really focused on the links or on online publications or research, which is really powerful.
hmm.
So if you can create those campaigns, you then continue to perform really well.
And specifically with what you're saying, it's like it's how the LLMs are interacting with the internet.
Yeah,
And like you said, they're prioritizing not just these like niche specific topics, but they're looking at more impactful posts, which is
correct.
measured by, how much, like, is it just like backlinks, or like
The
how does it measure
quality of
the
the backlinks, yeah.
quality of the backlinks?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the
And
quality of like if CNN's linking to you versus, Tony's side blog that he just created last week, is going to have
got
very
it.
different impacts.
Got it. Because like in the I guess like the old world of SEO, there wasn't necessarily a way where the Google algorithm, let's say, was differentiating between those two. It would kind of gave similar weight to that those backlinks.
Yeah, at the start of Google, basically the evolution was Larry and Sergey kind of came up with the idea of backlinks. Larry created PageRank, Larry Page, which is a weighting based on the different pages that people have because these SEO people, I mean, we're assholes. We just created tens of thousands of websites and then that was a backlink and everything would rank. So Google realized, well, we need a different signal to weigh these websites and filter out which is a really credible website and which is not a really credible website. And that's been going on for honestly 18 years. The only change has been, Google's gotten better over time at discerning what's a good link and what's a bad link.
Got it. Okay. So maybe just going back to SEO more broadly, taking a step away from digital
Yeah.
PR, but SEO more broadly. Um, how do you think that traditional SEO tactics like keyword research and link building
hmm
need to adapt? Like, what are some of the changes that are coming down the pipe? We already talked a little bit about it with digital
Yeah.
PR, but what are some of the other changes that need to come down?
So I think we've kind of covered off link building, how that changes. Keyword research is an interesting one because I think things like keyword research are always gonna be around in some way, shape, or form. Because most people misunderstand keyword research. They assume keyword research is like if I'm like looking for a plumber, um, plumber Austin, plumbers Austin, best plumber Austin. That's that's not really keyword research these days.
Hmm,
Now we look at it more as topics, pillars and subtopics. It's called like a more of a hub and spoke model. Um, and that research into what people are looking for and what a business can provide, that's not just SEO, that's just good business 101. If I know what people are looking for and I can create content around that, or if I know what questions people are asking and I can answer those questions, that's just good content marketing and frankly, good business. So I don't think keyword research will go away. Please don't use AI tools for your keyword research. They don't do keyword research. They're not keyword research tools. All of them, they don't have the data on keyword research, so they just kind of make it up. So you'll be doing a bunch of keyword research on data that's completely made up. I've seen this happen a few times now where someone comes up with a big like keyword research dump and it's all like wrong data. You can use it to come up with ideas for keywords, but then you need to run that through a tool to actually get the
uh,
data on it.
yeah.
Um,
And are there tools that you find to be more forward looking, or ones that are, I guess, most helpful in the keyword research today?
SEMrush, Ahrefs, there's some. They're probably like your Swiss Army knives of the SEO world, and then you've got really more specific. in-depth tools that kind of go into seasonality and industry CTR and stuff like that. But I find you start getting a little bit too into the weeds sometimes with all this stuff.
I gotcha. So we're talking about some of these, mainstays of SEO. Are there any tactics that you're seeing are kind of becoming obsolete and falling by the wayside?
Yeah, a lot of like box checking SEO and box checking SEO are, exercise that I would deem as something that a monkey could do, right? We kind of referenced it earlier. I scrape a website, I do a site health audit, and I see, uh-oh, my images don't have alt tags, my headings don't have the right heading structure, my this or that. It's like the kind of SEO from 10 years ago. Now that stuff might have been great 10 years ago, but the reason why you're not ranking number one is not because you're using a H2 tag instead of a H1. I'm sorry to
Hmm.
all the SEOs sitting there listening and going like, oh, but it's not, according to W3, it's not how we, align these things. It's like, I get that, but Google doesn't care. Right?
Yeah.
Google just frankly doesn't care. And you're just creating busy work for yourself. There's an infinite amount of things we could do in SEO. Instead of me working through and meeting a W3C code guidelines, I could be building digital PR backlinks, which are going to have a tremendous benefit. So there's an opportunity cost in everything we do in SEO specialists. So I do think a lot of that busy work will fall off.
Hmm.
I think that's good. I don't think anyone sits around that wants to do that. I think we're entering this era of, you know, people becoming strategists. Every single person becoming a two things I think will happen. Everyone will think more strategically, and everyone will be more person facing. Could be client facing, could be customer facing. But if I want to do something, it's like I always love that famous kind of like what is it, XCD or something? What's it called? The comic strip. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Not familiar with
Um,
that. Yeah.
there's a great one where someone's talking to a developer and they're like, "Hey, every time someone takes a photo of this, I want to know where it's taken." And you turn around and you go, "Yeah, no worries, we'll get the geolocation on that. That's an easy thing." And they're like, "Cool, great, all right." And I also want to know every time someone takes a photo of this if it's a bird. You're like, okay, now I need to pull up like some like bird recognition frameworks. I don't know if they exist. And it's like, oh, by the way, and I want to know the location and where the bird's going. And you're like, okay, well now I need a research team in like 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So where I'm going with this is people don't know sometimes if they're outside their area how difficult certain things might be.
Hmm.
Something might be a 2-minute change that seems complicated, or something might be like impossible. Like we get a lot of customers that are like, yeah, I'm using Shopify and I want to change the checkout. And you're like, okay, well that is not an easy change to do given Shopify handle that. So I think there's always going to be room for, let's say I'm trying to get some development done, there's always going to be an opportunity for me to chat to Tony, and Tony's going to be the strategist or the architect. Even though he's going to be employing AI, he's going to be architecting that solution
Hmm.
because AI does exactly what we ask it to do. It's not necessarily, and I think we can all agree, if I did everything that clients asked me to do, I would have ruined a lot of businesses.
Hmm.
So it's about discerning that difference. So that's where I really think that AI will head into.
Yeah. And so like you were saying before, a lot of these kind of more busy work tasks, the couple of examples you gave is like the alt text image or
Yeah,
alt image text or something like that.
yeah,
And the H1 versus H2, like some of that lower, because what you're saying is it's not that it doesn't impact it. It's just that in light of all of the other things that are more
yeah,
important, like digital PR, it's
yep,
not going to move the needle nearly as much.
totally, totally.
So I guess I'd be really curious to get your thoughts on this because I've been talking with a couple people about this, specifically WordPress shops. There's been some hubbub going on with WordPress,
Oh yeah,
and I think the thing I'm most curious about is, do we start to see a diminishing of WordPress and its prevalence for websites? Because right now it's like, I think the
everywhere.
majority of websites are WordPress sites.
Yeah.
And I'm like, does any of this start to do we start to see a decline because of the way things are going with AI, with the way search is
Yeah,
going? Does any of that change for WordPress?
it's a good question. I mean, you guys in the web development camp, on the WordPress front, you've certainly had your fair share of drama recently. But I mean, looking at it more from a holistic, like WordPress versus Squarespace versus Shopify versus HubSpot, I think WordPress really rose to prominence because it was a relatively easy way to edit and a generally agreed upon, foundational layer that everyone kind of knows how to use WordPress, right? And it just kind of became universal. I think that still holds true. No matter what happens, people still kind of like the WordPress experience. AI and stuff might mean that, a lot of our information is now presented in a different way. But just like when we had websites, stores still existed. I think the same holds true that you will still have a website and it will still be very important, even if there's other ways of getting information. So I don't think that's going away anytime soon. I think maybe other platforms, like we just moved to HubSpot, frankly, wasn't my decision. So I don't know the full ins and outs of that. We used to be on WordPress, that seemed to work fine, but then there was a desire to move to HubSpot just for more tracking and implementation and stuff like that. So I think that there'll be more businesses doing that, but I think we've seen the peak of WordPress. I don't think,
Hmm.
to be honest. Like, and that's not a bad thing. I think WordPress will still continue to be strong. And we're talking, like, what is it, tens of millions of websites on WordPress? And I think there will still be tens of millions or millions of websites on WordPress. But I just think there's more room now for other platforms.
Hmm. Yeah, I could see that. I could, especially because with WordPress being a more open source platform versus like
Mm,
the HubSpots or the, like what Shopify or, any of the other
totally,
places
totally.
where they have like a much more, done for you type of service.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, I know obviously that's why we have web development shops that specialize in WordPress because that's what kind of takes it to the next level. But what I'm hearing you say is you're not necessarily saying WordPress is going to go away tomorrow,
Mm,
but it's probably not gonna come back to another peak point
yeah,
in the future.
exactly. I think that, it's hard for people to see things and conceptualize things. A lot of people see the drama surrounding WordPress, the migration from WordPress to other platforms, and see the two as coinciding. They're like, this is causing that. But not necessarily. Sometimes it's just that WordPress was like, like, of course it had to go down in use. There was no way for it to go up in use. Pretty much
Mhm.
everyone was using it.
Mhm.
So just like it went up, unless it really reinvents the game again, which frankly, Tony, I can't see in the current political landscape WordPress managing to reinvent itself to a new, better platform. I think that other platforms are going to take some of that.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Okay, so you alluded to it a little bit before. We were talking about some of the mainstay players in SEO, like SEMrush and then Ahrefs. How do you pronounce
Yep,
that?
Ahrefs.
Ahrefs. Um, but like, are there any, I guess, up and coming AI tools, ones that you guys have found, at StudioHawk that have been particularly helpful in doing the SEO work?
This is a good question because this always it's a tricky one, right? It's funny. Everyone's like, AI is the future, AI is the future. So how much are you using AI? And you're like, well, quite a bit. And they're like, well, what are you using it for? And you're like, well, very basic things.
Right.
But and I would say to that, like, AI is the worst it will be today. That, like, the stuff you're getting today, if it's not perfect, cool, well, it's probably going to be better in a year. Having said that, like, we have a few different tools we use to do things. Frankly, I think the best AI tools we use, outside of like OpenAI and Claude that everyone's kind of using, are just very simple tools. AI is very good for very simple things, or fact checking work, or making your emails a little nicer, or
Hmm.
things like that. But we've time and time again tried to use AI to do more complex tasks like information architecture work and stuff like that. It just it there's a gap between the context and what the AI understands and how it all comes together. That's
Hmm.
where human is really necessary to kind of understand that.
Hmm.
Um, I'm just trying to think specific tools. I see. I'm not across that level of operations of what tools are going on. There's a big initiative internally I don't know if it's an internal project name or if it's actually called that. I think it's called Moonlight or something, and it's like a repository that you can create of a bunch of AI tools, prompts, things, and that's being used within the agency so that
Hmm.
people can quickly bust out StudioHawk created tools or prompts to
Hmm.
do certain tasks faster. That seems to get good use. But this is the nebulous part of where AI is at the moment. I couldn't tell you how much additional yield AI is giving us,
Hmm.
or what specific tasks have been made incredibly easy. I just know like things like broadly, I know everyone in the organization's using it. I know that translation and writer's block are pretty much gone now. Our average
Hmm.
amount of words we're able to create is a lot higher. Translation for international clients, like we're doing a big project for QuickBooks, is
Hmm.
so much easier now. But a lot of the actual tactics and day-to-day stuff we do is still very much manual.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, even in our own firm for Equip, we fractional CFO work. There's a desire. There certainly is a desire to,
Mm,
hey, let's leverage what we can for this to come up with suggestions for you know what what the results mean from the prior month. And I think time and again, we're even finding it too. Is it's like we know what we want to say. We're just like testing to see like
yeah,
what would this come back with? And I mean, we give it plenty of really solid prompting. It's not a lack of good
yeah,
prompt.
yeah.
It's just there, like you said, there's a kind of a limitation because they're so broadly trained, and then when you
Mm,
configure them just a little bit or prompt them just a little bit, it's not quite able to yield that more strategic mindset. So
yeah,
I can definitely see that. But like you said too, it's not like I mean, today is when AI is going to be at its worst. It's only going to get better from here. So we might have a conversation 6 months, and that's going to be very different. So
100%.
so
Exactly.
good to hear your thoughts on that. So I want to pivot for a minute here to what we actually started the show with, which was you guys launching in the US. You got 500,000 in revenue in just 2 months, which is incredible. And what I'm curious about is kind of going back to your roots in Australia.
Mm,
um, so how is it in Australia? How do you kind of have to dial in your SEO game there? I think you and I were talking about this, and you said something to the effect of like the market in Australia is quite a bit smaller, and so
mm,
you really have to be on top of things.
yeah,
I'm curious to just hear more from your perspective in the Australian market in particular.
yeah.
Like, do you see is SEO even becoming more challenging in Australia? Like,
Mm.
how are things changing back in your home country?
Well, I think everything's getting more challenging, right? As more and more people compete and enter, it becomes more challenging. I think Australia, and I love Australia, but I don't think you could pick a worse market to start like a web dev or an SEO business or something like that. Frankly, and here's why. Because clients like are willing to pay very minimal for really good service. Very minimal because the market size and the value of the dollar and everything like that, very minimal. And the talent wants a lot of money, world leading salaries.
Oh, really?
Like you're paying, 120, $130,000 for a senior in Australia. Um, which is a lot of money when you've got clients that are not willing to pay nearly what they're willing to pay in the US. The UK is a bit better. Well, the UK is a lot better because clients are willing to pay probably a medium amount, but the talent cost is really low.
Hmm.
And the US, clients are willing to pay a lot, but the talent cost is probably medium.
Hmm.
Um, and so, starting out in Australia and trying to build a brand there, while it was terrible, like in terms of, sorry, I don't mean that in like, wow, Australia, and I hated the whole journey. I loved it. I loved every part of it, frankly. But it's just so much easier now when we expand, when we go to the US and we can get more money. The expectation of the work quality in the US is a lot lower compared to what people expect in Australia, even though they're
Hmm.
spending less. Um, So you can really make a splash as you enter the market and impress clients,
Hmm.
because we've had to completely make our model as efficient as possible. Like, we removed account managers so that people, we wouldn't have another layer of bureaucracy in the agency, and clients could work directly with a specialist, which meant no communication gaps, which meant less people in meetings, which means we could do more work, and
Hmm.
all these efficiencies we've absolutely baked in, which mean that we can afford to take more of a hit on margin or deliver more in regions like the US, and therefore allow us to grow faster. So that's kind of how I've always seen the model and the landscape there. Same with SEO. Australia's a massive country like the US, but imagine if the US was literally just LA, New York. It's pretty much just LA, New York. That's Australia for you. There's like Sydney, Melbourne.
Hmm.
But imagine LA and New York were half the size, maybe a third of the size, and that's Australia. So you obviously have like a very dense pocket that you're optimizing for,
Hmm.
and everyone's going after that same market.
I see. And so this gets into what you were talking to me about before, which is you need to be like hyper localized in
Yeah.
how you're doing your SEO. And it seems like that's kind of like the mainstay strategy in Australia, where what I've heard in these states, and you can correct me if I'm
Mm.
wrong, is that I think it's only been more recently that more SEO agencies, marketing agencies are really tapping into and focusing on much more localized SEO versus before. I think it was just like they're just kind of shooting
Yeah.
broadly through the whole
Yeah.
states.
Yeah, totally. And that's why, I think there's a lot of success to be had in that kind of localized strategies in the US, because it's such a big, like, even if you're just optimizing for Atlanta, that's such a big, like, place, big city, and you can start optimizing for adjacent cities, and then you can start going after the America as a whole. But previously there was so many companies. I mean, it would be laughable. You'd want to optimize for running shoes, and you're up against Nike and every giant juggernaut, and still, like, credit to the Americans, they're ambitious. They're like, I'm just gonna focus on running shoes. I'm gonna rank there, and they never really make any traction. Whereas if you start going, I'm gonna hyper like localize or niche down on this, and I can build my way up to ranking for running shoes. That's a way better way of doing it, and what we're
Hmm.
used to doing in Australia.
Yeah, interesting. So I guess your move, because fairly early on you moved from Australia and then entered the UK market, right? Was that
Yeah.
pretty like within the first couple of years of you guys starting, or
I think it was like 3 years in, 4 years
3
in,
years in?
maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, it was so not like super early. Probably 4 years in. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. And
maybe five.
was that move was that because the Australian market was just so saturated, it was so hard to get the growth you guys needed?
Well, there's a few reasons. The first was, and this might sound, very arrogant, but I knew at that point, 5 years ago, I knew that we had something really special in Australia, and I knew it would continue to grow in Australia. And so I think we were about, I don't know, 25 people then. We were already one of the largest in Australia at that time doing SEO. And I knew that our growth trajectory was just so strong, and there was no real barrier to why we couldn't double, or in the end, we ended up tripling that, and we're still growing. And I wanted to know whether this was a good Australian business or whether this could be a global business if we had a global model. The king of the world for SEO is the UK, right? Paid is all America, SEO and PR and all that stuff is all the UK. So I wanted to know, because I just wanted to know if we had the chops to bring it to London, the capital of SEO, and see if we can make it work. We got humbled very hard in our first year. We had to improve a lot, change a lot, optimize a lot. But one thing we really had on our side was our business model. Um, in the UK, they had, without a doubt, the most talented individuals that were, even their mids would rival our seniors in terms of seniority at the time. Um, and we took all that knowledge and transplanted it into our business model. The thing that London had was very archaic, bloated, full service business models. And so combining the two allowed us to then end up with really augmented, specialized talent. And then we just started poaching people from the UK, started shipping them over to Australia just like the old times. We got back at those Brits. Um, and what we ended up with was a really good kind of compromise between, we had really exceptional individuals with a really good business model to support them.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of why we ended up going to London.
So when you say business model, I just want to make sure that I'm hearing you right.
Yeah,
It,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it sounds like the business model you guys had, it was very focused on just
Yeah,
SEO versus the traditional model, which is the full service. We do anything and everything under the sun. We're
yeah.
your marketing agency. That's what you're referring to with business.
Correct. There were three main pillars of the business model. The first was very specialized, just SEO. The second was very selective in who we took on as clients. They had to be clients we thought we could generate results for, which meant we turned away probably 50% of the clients that came to us, because we really wanted to just companies that we knew we could create results for. And then the third thing, which probably the most unique part of it, was this idea of no account managers, direct access to specialists, and that meant that, yeah, that meant a lot for our business. The downside was we could only do SEO because we couldn't really be offering these different services. But the upside of that was tremendous. It meant that we could really beat out, all of our competition, because while they had to have two guys, we had one guy for every two guys they had. So if they wanted to have more SEO specialists, we would always have an advantage because we could just get another specialist on a campaign without needing the extra headcount, which meant we could beat
Mm.
them on margin and delivery every time.
Oh, interesting. And I suppose margin delivery, you also probably were able to beat them on price as well, or were you pretty
Yeah.
competitive on the price?
Well, we're able to beat them on price and delivery. So,
Hmm.
they say when you've got a business that's better, cheaper, and different, that's when you've got a really good model.
Hmm.
So we were able to do that. Nowadays, I don't think we compete so much on price. It's more, delivery. We get most of the work because people know us as the guys that handle that. I
I
think
see.
today we're the largest independent SEO company in the world.
Wow. I mean, I think some of the takeaways that I'm bringing from this story too is you entering that new market. Not only was it an opportunity just for greater revenue potential, but what you ended up finding was it was kind of a two-way benefit. There was you were able to kind of get new technical competence in this area, like you
Mm,
said, like their mids were your seniors back in Australia,
mm,
so you're able to kind of get that transplantation of
yeah,
knowledge, and sometimes that's what we're going to get when we go into these international markets. You're
yeah,
going to go into a country that just has a better practice. Like I think what is it, Japan, for like creating computers. They've
yeah.
got so much more competence than we might have in the States,
Hmm.
or Germany with their engineers. There's going to be certain markets you can go into that you're going to be able to learn so much from. And then on the flip side, like you were talking about, your business model, you had to be so nimble because of the Australian market kind of really squeezing you,
Yeah.
that you were able to really stand out in a pretty bloated market in London.
Totally. I think that's really it. Like, we were able to stand out with that. If we didn't have those USPs in our business, if we were just another agency, I had no doubt in my mind that it wouldn't have worked. We would have gotten there, realized how freaking good these guys were at SEO, and cut tail and run.
Hmm.
But because of those things, it enabled us to kind of expand there, and same with the US, kind of expand there. Whereas if we were doing paid media and trying to expand in the US, it would be another story. I'd be looking at that like the London of the SEO. I'd be looking at
Hmm.
that like, Jesus, how are we going to differentiate from the amazing paid talent that the States already has?
Yeah. So as you've only been here for a couple months in the States, but as you've been in the US market, I guess, are any initial like learnings, any initial, things you guys are encountering kind of like you had from London? I'm curious.
Yeah. I mean, I get so many learnings from the States. I mean, I love the States. I'm basing myself in Atlanta. I love it there. Such a cool spot. Um, my learning from the States is you guys are really just, the United States of America could not be more further from the truth in terms of a positioning statement. It's more like the 50 countries of America. Um, and I mean that in the best way. Like,
Yeah.
different places are completely different, how they act, how they operate, how they do things, different state laws, different, all these things. Um, so that's been really illuminating. I found American people to be very friendly and, something actually very similar culturally to Australians, which a lot of people might disagree with. But if you don't waste their time, they're happy to like give you a go. If you waste their time, they get annoyed fast. Like people say, "Oh, Americans get annoyed fast." It's like, dude, I get annoyed fast if people try and waste my time. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, but overall, I think the experience has been good. I think the SEO market there specifically, it's good for us, but I think that majority of companies are getting ripped off bad in their SEO.
Mm.
I think that there's little accountability, like not little accountability. I think people pay a lot of money for very average SEO there, but like
Mm.
box ticking exercise
Mm-hmm.
level of SEO, which just wouldn't fly in Australia or the UK because it's very competitive in that SEO subset. So I think that's a great opportunity for us to kind of come in there and to shake that up. But it's because it's like, again, it is like you might have an Atlanta SEO company that's doing work, and it's not going to be as good as some other companies that are more doing national work. But it's just interesting. It's really interesting to observe. But I've loved it. I found it to be a really great place to do business.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing you say though is there's a huge opportunity. Okay, that's good. And you guys are starting off in Atlanta. Would you say that you're primarily just focusing in on the Atlanta market, or are you going to kind of expand from there? Just go like how are you? What's your expansion strategy?
Yeah, so focus on like creating a talent base in Atlanta because we need really good talent that drives our business. So we're gonna need that. The talent in Atlanta is, you got Georgia State, like you've got a lot of, or Georgia Tech, sorry, you've got a lot of great individuals and talent there that we think we can really train up in the way we do SEO and start offering that to the US market. But yeah, the goal is obviously expand across America. We're trying to find different partners at the moment, like paid partners, website partners that we can refer work out to and start creating that ecosystem. Um, and then just go through and kind of focus on addressing that American market. But yeah, like if we can do Atlanta and then start doing New York, it's on the same time zone, and then just start doing whatever. I mean, that seems to be how it goes in America.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Well, I want to just double down on with your story, you guys being so focused on one specific service offering, that being SEO, and really becoming the specialists in that space. I think your own experience being able to expand to different countries and experiencing I mean, quite frankly, meteoric rise in revenues is a testament to why specializing as an agency is so important. I'm
Mm.
not sure if you've heard of Nick Petrosky over at Promethean Research.
No, I
Name ring
haven't.
a bell? Okay. Super, super awesome. Would recommend you go check him out. Also, any of our listeners, I've mentioned him multiple times. He's going to be a guest on our show, or he actually already has been a guest on our show. Does amazing research in the digital agency space. But when he was doing some benchmarking studies, and he was kind of doing that four
Mm.
quadrant matrix or whatever, where you look at the industry vertical and then the service specialization.
Mm.
Those that were both specialized in services and in their industry had the highest growth rate. I think they were two
Interesting.
times had revenue growth of two times as much as industry agnostic generalists. So
Wow.
it's evident. It seems pretty evident with how fast you guys are growing. So I'm glad to hear that that's been your guys' experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as we're rounding out the time, I'd love to know for people who, I mean, you've done a lot of interviews and podcasts and stuff like that. What would be the best place for our listeners to continue to follow what you guys are doing at StudioHawk, what you specifically are doing? Where's the best place for them to follow you?
So the website's StudioHawk.com. That's getting relaunched at the moment, but there's .com.au, .co.uk, depending on where you're listening from. Me specifically, I'm best on LinkedIn. I'm Harry Sanders on LinkedIn. There's a big photo of me with a hawk perched on my arm. Studio Hawk makes sense. But yeah, that's where I'm best to message, connect on, all that kind of good stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. And Harry's been fantastic to talk with. So I would highly recommend reach out to him, connect with him, follow him. He's posting some good stuff here on in the LinkedIn land. Well, Harry, I appreciate it so much. I know it's early there in the morning. I appreciate you taking some time to chat about all things SEO and a little bit of StudioHawk. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners. If you found value in our episode today, please leave us a review and tell your friends about us. If you're interested in being a guest on our show, as a digital agency owner, or maybe somebody with insights that can help digital agencies grow, head over to our website to learn more at acquip.com/podcast guest. That's ACCQUIP.com/podcast guest.